published her first novel with Quercus on the same day as my novel with Quercus. So I met her, I read it, and neither of us did terribly well. And then her book was discounted on Sony's for the Sony e-reader, and therefore there was a price match. And it absolutely took off, as it indeed absolutely deserved to do. It is The Unfortunate Granny Lit. It's called Thursdays in the Park, but it sold hundreds of thousands of copies. It then got lots of press because of those sales. It's now sold film rights to Charles Dance. I think it's a very good novel. I really enjoyed it. But the way it cut through the noise was actually by being 99p. Is that fair?
That was actually the one that I was thinking I might programme. Funnily enough.
Well, I think it's a great pricing, or what we, I seem to be marketing speak, I represent marketing speak today, dynamic pricing, as we call it. It's quite a controversial issue. I mean, it does devalue books, but it also, there are many people who have built careers or, been noticed and sold hundreds, and it's helped independent publishers who went down the 20p digital sort of ebook price route and then sold hundreds of thousands of print editions. It's a short-term strategy, really. I mean, then everyone starts discounting their book to 20p, then where will we be? So I think it's a very temporary thing that we're doing right now, and I think we are a couple of years behind America in terms of price promotions, and they started the kind of the Kindle Daily Deal and those discounts earlier on, and I think they're having less and less effect in America. And it used to be that the Kindle Daily Deal, which is selling an ebook for 99p for a day, then for weeks afterwards the sales would, they would be falling, but they would still remain quite high. I mean, that still has some effect, but not to the same extent. I think my personal worry is that people will get used to buying books for 20p. And I must admit that over Christmas I bought every single 20p book, and I had absolutely no intention of reading any of them, because it was just like, well, 20p, it's less than a paper, and I just don't think that's helping anyone, really.
No, I agree. I think it's quite a worrying thing, really, and also because it's all happened so fast, we're only now beginning to get analysis on it and to understand who these people are, apart from Carolina, who are buying all the books for 20p. The analysis normally seems to be showing that actually they don't care what they bought, really. They would just buy anything for 20p, and that as a way of building future readers and future customers, I think it's very short term and frightening, and in a way we need to go back to finding the people who are the people who go to literature festivals, the people who really want to buy books, absolutely I agree that the Kindle Daily Deal happens every day now, we put books into it, but the tail seems to be shorter than it used to be. Also, interesting for me, when my novels go up for it, they're literary fiction, and they sell less than the genre books, again, so people are being slightly discriminating about it, but I think there's a real danger that we're devaluing what we have. We're saying the books are worth 20p, even books you really, really, really want and would have paid £15 for if they're 20p. How am I, lovely debut novels that you've never heard anything about, how am I going to persuade any of you to spend £10 on them? I don't really know the answer to that. And I think then it becomes, to get back to television, of which there's very good television, I should say. I think it's a bit like watching terrible television. If it's free and you think it's a kind of great way to kind of switch off, if we're doing that to books, saying, well, actually they're 20p and really you shouldn't have any critical judgment about them at all, I think we're all in big trouble.
Yeah, this I think, particularly for this audience, is the big question. All of us who did the critical appreciation papers, we have been taught to read. We have been taught to discriminate. We've been taught to really look carefully at what we're reading. So should people like us be the gatekeepers? Is it actually democratic? To say that actually the largest audiences on television are for Coronation Street and EastEnders, not for, having just written one, Jimmy McGovern's dramas. The mass of people prefer what we might think of as second-rate fiction in whatever medium. why should we be the gatekeepers? Kathy, what would you say to that?
What would I say to that? I mean, I began a literary festival 10, 11 years ago because I loved fiction, and I was pretty particular about which fiction I liked. I mean, quite broad, but certainly particular. And it has been my surprise over the years that actually fiction is the most difficult thing to sell at the festival. I mean, non-fiction sells much, much better, and it is only very, very particular fiction that sells. I mean, there's a mass of glorious fiction out there, and the debut writers we programme every year, and it's hotly competed now. I mean, we have 3 debut writers every year, and Ali Smith, formerly of Newnham, helps select those debut writers. And I'm delighted that the first audience we had for debut fiction, I think Patricia was on the panel. I used to do, the format then was an established author introducing 2 debut writers, and Patricia was the first one, and you had Helen Habala and Louise Tonder, I think. And I think we had about 12 people in the audience for debut fiction. We now regularly get about 120, 130 people, which is a tremendous achievement.
And do you know if they buy the books afterwards?
Not massively. I mean, some do. I mean, I have a friend every year, and it's her favourite event every year. She goes to the debut writers, she buys all 3 and romps through them, and generally loves them. And there is a wide spectrum of what people like, and I think people reading is better than people not reading generally.
And I think I'd go back to my my comment about prizes and about book groups, in that yes, there are the masses, as you're making them sound, but I think they read up, they read down, and it's sort of whatever that's actually. But they do seem that along with E.L. James selling 5 billion copies, Hilary Mantel's actually sold quite an awful lot too, and I find that that's reassuring and shows that it's possible to have both out there. But I think it's a good idea to have gatekeepers of some sort, just to help people through the paths, through the gates, really. Otherwise there's so much out there, it's very hard to be able to spot it. And I have no idea whether I'm right, or Carolina's right, or Kathy's right in watching programmes at the festival. But we have to be very aware. We have to read everything that's out there to know what people are after, and to judge the responses. And it does seem that, much as we worry about culture going downhill, people want it to go downhill and uphill. And I think for that, it's a fairly important role that we have.
I'm so torn about the issue of gatekeepers, because I want literature and reading to be as democratic and egalitarian, and really if 5 billion people choose to read the modern version of Cinderella, which is E.L. James, and well, they should be able to do so, and with my Cambridge degree, who am I to say they shouldn't, really? That would be terribly patronising. But I think at the same time, I like gatekeepers. I love reviewers, and I love reviews, and I just think they just perform such an important function. I want to know that someone who's read more than me, and who is au fait with culture, and who is erudite, can kind of just join the dots in a way that I wouldn't be able to do. And I think it's very important for me to know that the judges, awards judges, are qualified to be judges. And I think in recent years there's been a kind of tendency on some awards to go for, D-list celebrities, just to kind of spice things up or to create controversy. And I'm not sure what purpose it actually serves, because there are very many other gatekeepers who reach out to mainstream and popular culture already, like Richard and Judy, and I think they are fantastic. They've done more for popular reading than anyone else in the industry. But I think we should, rather than try and popularize everything, I think we should kind of, not in an elitist way, but I think we should know what quality is, and we should fight for it and preserve it and champion it. So I think gatekeepers they're not really gatekeepers. I just think it's just people who stand for quality, and I think we shouldn't allow culture to be devalued, or we shouldn't try to make everything popular.
I mean, for example, sorry.
Well, no, what I was just going to say is that actually, people do make their minds up for themselves. I mean, you talk about 20p books, books which are put on promotion. I mean, a great example in point is recently, I think it was a couple of years ago, the Times ran a series of promotional offers on books where if you bought the paper, then you could buy a copy of X for $1.99. And one of them was Alone in Berlin, Hans Fallada, which is a remarkable book and had been kind of forgotten, and sales went on massively, way beyond the promotion for that book. I mean, it kick-started what was a very, very good book, and had it not been a good book, then it wouldn't have happened in that way.
I mean, would any of you, and particularly you, Cathy, pay any attention at all to Amazon reviews or to a sort of Twitter storm about a book? I mean, that's democratic crowdsourcing of opinion, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not the first place I would go because I don't buy books on Amazon, so I rarely look at Amazon.
I think Amazon is such a trick. I mean, if someone has 500 reviews and they're all 5 stars, you just think, well, this has to be a hit and it has some kind of something to it. But then if you start reading some of the, I think for literary fiction again, that's really hard because, it kind of, the criteria for a successful literary novel are slightly different from the kind of book club or a more genre where it is very, very much about, I loved it, I read it in one sitting, which is the kind of, which is what an Amazon review usually is. It tends to be. It's like, it made me cry, it made me laugh, I thought it was fantastic. But it kind of rarely allows for people who are genuinely, who are into practical criticism, perhaps studied it at college, don't go and write long essays on Amazon. So I think that it kind of serves a different function. I don't like the star system because it's never like for like. I mean, someone will give you 5 stars because they read it in one sitting, and then you'll get a 1 star because they don't like the price of the book, and I think that's damaging to authors. And there's absolutely nothing in the Amazon terms and conditions when you write a review. There's nothing to prevent you from posting a review if you haven't read the book. So you can actually, and that happens a lot. You can post a review and you can start by saying, I haven't read it, but, and give it a 1-star review. And I think that's quite outrageous.
It's a little bit like TripAdvisor, isn't it? I mean, the review is only as good as the person who's written it, and you don't know the person who's written it. And with that kind of the reviewers you trust and respect, you build up that trust with somebody who you read regularly.
And there was also a scandal last year where several, I think mainly American writers, admitted that they bought reviews by the yard. I think you can buy sort of 200 reviews for Amazon for $499 or something. So, read them at your peril.
The only other thing that I'd add is, I basically disregard Amazon reviews. It's not, mind you, most books that are out there, they're not, I don't have to make a choice about them in terms of an editor. But I think that's where blogging has come in, the literary bloggers have come in,
yes.
because that is communities of people who are book lovers and incredible readers, and they bring people together to talk about literary fiction if they're a literary blogger, and I think that's an incredibly exciting development. And I think what bloggers have to say is something that publishers and agents and everyone should be interested in. But again, it's a way of cutting through the swathed stuff, and it's not quite as agenda-driven as the Amazon reviews might be.
I think Amazon reviews are hilarious, actually, some of them, and I recommend them as a kind of a sort of fun way to pass the time, because especially if you link, if you see someone's reviewed one book and then you see what else they have reviewed, and so they'll review a book and then also they will review an electric heater or something, and write with the same kind of passion or venom, about different products.
But one could, I mean, certainly the point about book bloggers is I think is more democratic if you think of sort of how often the literary critics of the great newspapers review each other's books and do sort of blurbs for each other's books, and it must to an outsider look like a small closed shop, whereas I think the book bloggers are, in that sense, a breath of fresh air.
I mean, it is a small closed shop, and that's its problem. That reviewers, they all know each other. They are, it is very incestuous, and they know the novelists, and so yes, it is a problem.
I was thinking about blogs the other day, though, in a kind of sad way, about how publishing never very good at working out how to monetize its content. And that now we have all these wonderful bloggers, and they're completely brilliant, and they're book buying, book loving people, and we send them hundreds of free books now. That's another customer gone.
Absolutely. I'd like to move on to kind of how all this impacts on the actual content, and then we'll open up to some questions. But how do you think that writing is? I mean, we started off at the very beginning, Carolina. You were talking about what Margaret Atwood has been doing, but in what way is the content gradually going to react differently and think freshly because of new ways of writing? And also, what kind of writers are going to enter the arena, and what kind of writers who really do not want to tweet and blog and even appear at festivals may gradually be driven out of the market? Do you think that the sort of discoverability and visibility of writers and the change in delivery content is actually affecting what the content's going to be and how writers write?
I personally don't think it's. The questions. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question properly, but I don't think what people are writing is changing, because I don't think they're second guessing how it's going to be coming out in the world. But certainly not when it's novels. I mean, I can only speak as an editor of novels. I mean, obviously, people are writing, as they always have, about technological change and a lot of post-apocalyptic novels coming out. And I think that people are responding to everything that's happening, globalization, Twitter, it's all appearing in novels in different ways, or a reaction to it, or busy writing historical novels very far away from it, or not as far as we might think.
For example, length. I mean, that you could publish a novella as an ebook without worrying about so much about.
I think that will be interesting, and it will be priced accordingly. So in a way, it's exciting for people who have written shorter fiction, and for short stories. I mean, Carolina and I share a fantastic writer who had a short story collection last year, and he's got his first novel this year. And we did 5 collections of short stories last year, which. And everyone says that publishers don't touch short stories anymore, and it is true that the great British public don't buy them like they do buy novels. But because of the internet and because of putting them out in this different way, there are a lot more avenues for getting short stories out there to people. So I think it gives them more opportunity. I haven't noticed anyone changing what they would write because of the way it's going to go out into the world.
I think within genre, I think people might sort of adapt their writing to what the digital space allows or offers them. I mean, I think fan fiction sites have become so popular, and there is this writing community website called Waterpad, and it is incredible if you haven't been on it. I mean, if people are worried about the future of reading and writing, it is the most incredible thing. There are millions of people on it, mainly teenagers, writing fiction, writing bad poems or good poems, writing really bad fiction or good fiction, and it's a peer review website where the readers rate it and comment on it, and the comments are of the kind of LOL variety, but they are reading and writing, and it's for free, and it's sort of the vast majority of the novels are One Direction fan fiction. And it is, and kind of vampire stuff and Jane Austen derivative fan fiction, and there will be great writers coming. I mean, I'm assuming 90% of it is not, literature, but something good will come out of it, because people are just sort of, in a way, in that it seems to me like in those communities, this distinction between genre, popular verse, it just doesn't really exist. They just read and write, and popular culture, and sort of there's a bit of high literature there, and some well-known writers are engaging with it, but I think there are people who are using it, and actually sometimes it's so big, but it's invisible to people who aren't part of it. There are these communities that, the Twilight community, online community, was just absolutely enormous, but I imagine for most people who are not part of it, it wouldn't even, you can kind of create, not ghettos, but these sort of very mainstream things that aren't known to anyone who's not part of it. But in terms of what writers write and how they write, I think they just need to write about things that are relevant much more, because if they aren't, then again, how do you get noticed? If you are a literary novelist and what you engage with is hard to promote or hard to talk about, that all that you have at your disposal is your beautiful prose, then that's very, very hard to it's very hard to be found. There was this, I often mention this exercise apparently that a marketing guru at a publishing house devised, which was to use blurbs from jackets and separate them from the books and put them on one kind of in a column on one side, and all of them said, every single one was a variation on beautifully written, so stunning prose, beautifully written. And then there was a list of authors, another column of a list of authors, and he asked people in the room to kind of, find the quote, match the quote to the writer, and of course you couldn't. And the names of the authors varied, from crime writers to Booker Prize winners. So if all you have going for you is beautiful prose, there's nothing wrong with that. But how do you get, when they go to a bookshop, how do you find that book? Or, well, actually bookshops, how many will there be left? So, really sad.
Thank you very much, Kathy, Helen and Caroline. Thank you.